There we go. And we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, Donny here, Wednesday afternoon, 2:30 p.m. Innovation Fika, as every Wednesday, on the nose, almost, nose +1, Innovation Fika. Today, again, with a live audience here at KTH. Fantastic. Woo! And all of this is, of course, AI tricks. So I have AI, my avatars here, I'm keying them. It's actually real people here. I've just given a lecture about KTH Innovation and the KTH Innovation Readiness Levels, and now diving straight into Innovation Fika with everybody online. And as usual, as you come online, I know we had 55,000 people signed up online. So as you come online, add who you are and where you're from, so we can get the networking going in the thread there as well. Innovation Fika every Wednesday, live on LinkedIn, YouTube, all the episodes saved on YouTube. So go to YouTube and find, after this episode, 138 episodes saved there with incredibly way smarter than me people and really cool subjects as well. So without further ado, I will jump straight into today's episode 138. And I am thrilled not only to have a live audience behind me, I'm also thrilled, even more thrilled, of course, for my guest in the show today, Johanna Staaf. Welcome into the studio.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So nice to be here with the 360 audience. I think it's the first in my career.
But it's cool. We have like a full. It feels like we have good support here as well behind us here. So anyway, when I reached out to you and we started talking, the heading of the session was how to leverage and use AI in industry. But before we jump into that, let's start with me asking you the same question I ask all of my guests. So Johanna, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, some would answer it's an existential question. But for this forum, I'm Johanna Staaf. I'm currently a management consultant within Invent, Capgemini Invent, Swedify, Nordics. I have a background from many different industries, actually.
Yep.
So before joining Invent, I was heading up an innovation lab in a B2B retailer named Ahlsell Group in the Nordics. I also have a background around a decade from the telecoms.
Okay.
So working in Telenor across the Nordic operations and also Asia. And before that, media. So I have a bit of experience on this setting. But I used to work in MTG, Modern Times Group, TV3 and the TV6.
Okay. So now I feel really ashamed about my kind of dorky setup here with the cameras and everything. So anyway, but I'm so happy you could make it here today as well. So director of data and AI. What's the actual title there?
Exactly. So I'm a director of data and AI analytics services. So what does that actually?
What is that actually?
Yeah, what does that actually mean? Well, it means that what I do is advising and helping and supporting clients in everything related to moving into AI, advanced analytics, with the help of data, getting control of your way of work, engaging the organization along the way. Yeah. As you know, when you work with a digital transformation of any sort, half of it is technology, half of it is the people.
Of course. I see we have Ulla-Lisa Thorén as well. Hi, Ulla-Lisa. Ulla-Lisa was actually on one of the shows way back, like episode 120-something. One of the best sales coaches in the world online today. So I hope she has lots of questions about complex sales and AI as well. Well, or let's not hope that. But happy to see you, Lisa, and everybody else coming online. Add your comments as you come online as well. Coming back then to the subject of the day, AI. I mean, okay, I have 1,000 questions for you. But first of all, it feels like, I mean, it's not really like, we had nothing, and then this suddenly ChatGPT, and then we had everything. I mean, it's kind of been going on for some time before that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, as you all know, especially I know this audience with where you are working, algorithms, it's not a 2023 fad. It's been around since the 60s. So we all know that. I think that what really has happened with ChatGPT, like when the CEO of NVIDIA is saying that this is now the kind of smartphone moment, Why is that?
Yeah.
It is actually because now with the chat interface, we get an interface that is accessible to everybody. You know, the people like you and me, not only the data scientists or the PhDs in mathematics. It's now a technology that is available to everybody in any profession, in any capacity, and in any generation. I think this is also very interesting.
Yeah.
So anyone, I mean, we can even see this in our research from Capgemini, that even the more, let's say, senior users, they are adopting it so fast. It's so easily accessible.
Yeah.
So this is why it becomes, you know.
But it's very similar to other like tech adoption. I remember. I mean, I was in the mobile phone business, making not apps, programs. They were called programs for phones back then, Java programs, and we had to make like 60 or 70 versions of every program because there were 60 or 70 different handsets. And we had this huge table of like 70 handsets, and like 40 of them were for Nokia only. And we had to try the program on every single handset to make sure they worked. And then suddenly in came, not the iPhone as an innovation, but innovation, but actually the App Store and the democratization of apps. Like it looks like it starts here, ends there, it fits here. An app, boom.
Yeah.
And that suddenly sort of unleashed the possibility for everyone to create apps. And suddenly it became a business tool and a media tool and a different kind of tool altogether, with, of course, the bigger screen and things like that. Yeah. And what you're saying about AI as well, I've seen this with researchers that I'm working with now. They're doing extreme complex mathematics. And the biggest struggle they have is to create a user interface that enables somebody to actually use it.
Yes.
So with this, the OpenAI, and they were the first ones, and a lot of other ones as well, with Bard and everything. But with the ChatGPT, going to a web page and just creating an account and writing whatever. Please write my essay at school so I don't have to.
Exactly. And I think this is really interesting. It's really to the point, right? That the technology has been available and it has been developed for some time. I mean, the generative part now of AI. But the OpenAI team were the ones who made, were really startup-y and decided, okay, let's release it. Let's kind of be in beta and develop it with the users on board and get
But then we're talking about generative AI. I mean, AI is so much more than just that. So we're talking about the like industry applications and looking at sort of when we're looking at like mission critical processes and industry processes. What would you say how do you start? I mean, where do you start if you're trying to figure out where to start?
Yeah, exactly. I think we are seeing this a lot, and this goes across all sectors. Actually, it's not only to the industrial players. It's really, regardless of industry. There's so many use cases that you read about and you get inspired. You see the edge of innovation, but where do you start? I think where our learning and my learning as well. I mean. From my previous background working in Ahlsell, I headed up an innovation lab in a company that is 170 years old, with a lot of data on premise, a lot of manual work, and then all of a sudden you read up on AI, and I get the question, okay, Johanna, what do we do with AI? Brilliant! I love getting the questions, and now we can start working on it. And I think in my own experience, and also what I see with clients, when I'm talking to other players, is that you really need to think about your context, the fact that you are a company, you have a business agenda, you have a strategy, you have business objectives. How can AI support your company's overall journey? You have to start there. You have a lot of people, the technical experts, and then the sales people, all the people in the organization who can come together and make it happen. But it's not only the data scientists. You really need to engage the entire organization and really mobilize and first paint a picture of, okay, what is actually possible? So moving into that inspirational phase, what can you do? Let's be a little crazy. If I were now an auto company, what are the actual possibilities if we don't think about the car as just a vehicle, A to B. It's a platform for something else. What could we do? How can we leverage AI?
Yeah.
But then you need to, of course, kind of prioritize it down to what is supporting our business. What is supporting our business objectives? Is it about, growing our revenue? Are we trying to make things more efficient? Do we want to enhance our customer experience? What do we want to do?
But that's also, it's kind of similar. And I know that I'm not going to say it's the same thing with new words, but if we were talking about digitalization and automation, it would be the similar kind of understanding the value chain and the holistic approach to what we're doing and what makes sense to automate and where can we add components to make things easier. But then, of course, I think that AI, and I'm asking you, is that, it can do a lot more than just sort of flip a switch. There's so much more, especially when it comes to large amounts of data as well.
Yes.
That's kind of one of the bigger wins, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So looking at the technology, I think, yes, you're perfectly right in that when any technology enters the space, you take kind of a similar approach, but you look into what are the specifics. It's like we were talking about now, generative AI. That's actually just, okay, the point is that you can create new things. For the other things, you have AI.
Yeah.
So what can you do with that?
Of course.
And that's where you see that AI and machine learning, in particularly that part of data science space, can really walk through, vast amounts of data, find the different patterns that you as a human were not able to do. So you can imagine a whole analyst team really being augmented with machine learning to find all these new patterns. This will really enable you to take better decisions. Because as you grow, the more data that you collect, the more that you put into, your decisions, the more challenging and complex it gets. So you really need to be augmented by.
So what you're saying that it's actually a visualization revolution going on, that we can suddenly see patterns and we can suddenly, we can see things happening and correlations and things also that we couldn't, the whole sort of churning big data sets and getting some kind of actionable results out of that.
Yes, exactly. And that's really only one part of it, right? To seeing these new patterns that would enable you to take new decisions, better informed decisions. But it's also about kind of the probabilities, right? The likeliness of events happening.
Yeah.
So, really into an industry context, looking at manufacturing, for example. So predictive maintenance of your systems. So really detecting all the various data sources that you, with your human eye and your human ears or your tactile, feeling, are not able to detect. All the other kind of patterns that happen there within the machine, so to speak. And all these can now be picked up with sensors so that you can get an output of, okay, the likeliness of this happening within this time frame is this.
Yeah. Probabilities, I like that. We have some questions here. I'm actually on that here from Ulla-Lisa. Is AI better for hardware than soft skills, human to human? Because Ulla-Lisa is a salesperson, don't forget that. She works with people in the sales situation here.
Okay, this is really interesting. So my interpretation of the question, whether, let's say, an AI interface with a human or a human interface with a human is better. It depends on what you optimize for, first of all. Yeah. I like to talk about kind of in a sales context. I like to think about the high tech and the high touch. So in a context where you have a similar type of product that you would be selling to a large amount of people. Let's take, a pure software company. Let's take Spotify, for example. Makes a lot of sense to have kind of an AI-driven machine interface talking to the customer in a customer context of, am I going to choose the single subscription or the family subscription? Just making up an example. Yeah. Because the product as such is very standardized, it's very transaction-based. In the other, let's say, corner cases where you have kind of a high degree of tailor-made interactions where you need, almost like, okay, I'm going to buy a new suit. I need a tailored suit to my own measurements. There's not a lot of standard to that. To some extent, of course, you can modularize it. But here you may need kind of a human to diagnose and to advise. Yeah. I don't know if that answered your question, Ulla-Lisa.
Yeah, well, I think you're onto something interesting there as well, because I'm seeing, I'm not, without putting any sort of valuation, good or bad, but I'm seeing lots of examples where where companies or startups are using AI to evaluate humans, as in, like, actually not a sales example, Lisa, but actually an interview example where there's an AI that listens to the interviewer interviewing somebody, and then scores the interviewer on how well they handled the interview with the applicant. So not scoring the applicant, but actually scoring the interviewer.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing that also I'm seeing that in sales as well. But that's the kind of a darker side of it, when they start scoring humans in down to the like millimeter. And this, like, in second 23, the mood dropped in the room, kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, how Tayloristic can we become? But
I think I just want to jump in there and say that it really depends on what you do with information.
Yeah.
Because, of course, if you attach to that conclusion a trigger of an event saying that now you're going to grade this interviewer and give them a low score based on the output of the interview, of course, this has a real impact. But if you instead put a human in the loop and just give this information, kind of an unbiased, hopefully unbiased information of the interviewer, then that interviewer can have a coaching session with the human afterwards and say, hey, okay, according to this output, we saw a drop. Can you please tell us why? Can you please tell me why?
So some kind of responsibility there as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And I think responsibility in AI is critical.
So then we have this company, and hopefully there is lots of data. Hopefully. And I'm addressing the rumor as well. I mean, I'm assuming that everybody has terabytes of data. It's sort of stored and labeled, and you know exactly where it is and what it's for and everything like that. But again, nobody in the room, of course. But my experience is that there's tons and tons of data out there, and not always, we don't know really what to do with it, and we don't know where to start digging or what we're trying to get out of it, kind of thing. Where would you sort of start? Yeah,
classical example. And by the way, in my experience, yes, there's tons of data, but we also know that 80% of a data scientist's work is kind of data cleansing, data wrangling. So getting the data tidy is something that is a huge part. But of course, it's challenging to understand, okay, I sit with all these data sources, what do I do with it? Again, think about the business objectives, talk to the people in the organization, identify the pain points. And I really like, something like a sales organization. That is brilliant. These people always have too much to do. They have such high ambitions. They have such high targets, always working overtime, have too much to do. How can we help them?
Yeah.
If they could be assisted by more data to take those better decisions, for example, in prioritization. Who are really let's say that I cover like 50 different clients. I may have my top 10 always top of mind, but the rest, how do I deal with them? What's their behavior? What's their profile? Any advice for me from, let's say, an assistant to how I can prioritize?
Ulla-Lisa, we need to get you in touch with Johanna. We need to get a sales thing going here with the two of you as well here. Okay, let's see here. From Ulf here, how will generative AI affect Capgemini's business model? That's a good one.
That's a brilliant one. Yeah. Ulf, you know what? I'm not going to talk specifically about Capgemini's business model and how it's going to affect that because I'm not.
That's a secret.
That's a secret. It's not in my position to do so. So we have people who are better suited to respond to that question. But I think that in general, generative AI, I just want to pick up on that, what it can do across any industry that has knowledge workers is really to improve the productivity. I mean, definitely.
Yeah.
We're seeing some brilliant, really interesting data now, for example, with, let's say, Microsoft and Copilot being rolled out. Really interesting to see the productivity improvement for users. I'm not talking about
in general, I get it. Yeah, and I agree with you.
Observing with our research and so on. And I think this is really interesting, that you're augmenting the knowledge worker. So how will that, if you are in the knowledge working space, how will that kind of change?
I think that is. I think the augmentation, the word is very, very important, because it's not that now we're going to replace every single human being. I mean, they're just like calculators and other technology that we use to sort of level ourselves up. I mean, nobody. Again, like computers in design work and Photoshop and everything like that, that sort of leveled us up and still enabled us to deliver a human-in-the-loop result.
Yes.
I write a lot, and I use generative AI. Not to write text for me, because I never agree with what it writes for me. But the famous quote from any writer is that the blank piece of paper is the scariest thing you can see. Yeah. But it's one word on that paper, and it inspires you to continue. The grain of sand that creates a pearl in an oyster. You need the stimuli.
Yeah.
So I use it as a stimulant.
Yeah.
And I throw something at it, and it comes back to me. And preferably I don't agree with it, but it gets me sort of writing. It gets me going. So I think it's a great way of, as you say, enhancing the human.
And I think you can really move that into any context. Right now we're talking about writing and the writer's block. But if you're an analyst in a company, you're browsing through, spreadsheets of Excel data. Also just like having that kind of assistant bouncing on off ideas. Like, okay, where do I start digging in this data? Just give me one idea. So it's almost like a colleague. And I think this is really interesting also what you see, how people are working with Gen AI. And there's an interesting study from the MIT that have also been seeing how knowledge workers are working with Gen AI. And there are two types of people, or two types of users emerging: the cyborgs and the centaurs. You probably read it. I don't know, but
I've heard about it. I haven't read it, but I've heard about it. Yeah.
And it's so interesting how people are now starting to use it. So the cyborg type of user is really co-creating seamlessly with the Gen AI. So they really blend together. So at the end result, you're not really able to tease out what was Gen AI and what was the human. And then you have the other one who takes a more reserved approach and keeps the expert role in relation to the Gen AI and delegate tasks.
Okay. So two major
you
sort of
can really
sets
work with your assistant in different ways.
We're getting tons of questions. This is cool. We're getting lots of questions. Keep the questions going, because we can come back in the feed afterwards and answer questions in the feed on LinkedIn. So please keep your questions going in the feed here, everyone, even after the show, because then we can, me and Johanna can follow up with answers. But I'm just looking at the timer. This is a half an hour, short coffee break. And we have to finish the top 3 tips from our expert guest that we want to leave you with. So kind of ending off towards the end of the show here with Johanna's top 3 tips for the whole sort of AI in industry, how to enhance your industrial processes with AI. Tip number 1, focus on business value. You've just said this a number of times, but say it again.
Yeah, I can't stress it enough, because it's so important, and I know it from experience, because working in operations for many years, I also know that when a challenge comes from management to start working on something like this, you typically, pull together a team, you get the best experts, the best data scientists, the best data engineers, and so on. But these guys and girls are nothing without the business. So, focus on the business value. That's how you select the use cases. That's how you create value, and that's how you build it for the long term.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Tip number 2. Invest in your data foundation. That was the data is everything, right? Invest in, what does that mean? Invest in your data foundation. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, data, it's really the essence. It's the fuel here, right? So what I mean is that the things that we talked about, you sit on large amounts of data, but you don't really have it in good place. So you don't have a structure for it, or you probably don't have a governance for it. Who owns that data? Who manages the data within the organization? You might not have proper data models. All of these things must be in place sooner or later. And I know this is challenging for many businesses to think of data as an investment, but it really is, because you can never leverage. I mean, there's no AI without proper data.
Yeah, and you were also talking about cleaning up data, because I'm working with some, as I said, some really, really advanced research in algorithms with filters to clean up really, really dirty data. And just that process, and That's really, really cool, because usually the filters used today is just a dampening filter, which just dampens everything, like turning down the volume. But they're actually trying to, using predictive AI as well, they're trying actually to sort of rebuild and fill in the gaps and everything. So they're actually cleaning up the data and making it sort of, it's super cool. It's like super advanced, but definitely invest in your data. That's it's the best investment you can do to start with. Yes. And then tip number 3, leverage AI, but do it responsibly.
Yes, and I think this is also something that is becoming even more important, and especially for those of you who are advanced, who already have AI systems in place. Really make sure that as you scale, be sure to do so responsibly. Because as we know, we were talking now about the data, there can be biases in the data sets that the data scientists are training on, and this will affect the output. You know, you have seen in consumer, like FMCG companies, such cases where there have been kind of discrimination cases, and you want to avoid that, even regardless of industry. And we also have regulations coming up, so
I'll go with that one. No, I think that is. I was in a business case. Well, I was actually a governmental case. It was in a South American country. They were going to use big data AI analysts, and then of course to increase the speed of the courts. So it had the machines that are reading through all of the court decisions for the last 40 years. And my question was, but have you actually checked to make sure that the ones that are reading was the right decisions? Or, you know, how many, I didn't want to call them corrupt in any way, but, you know, what is it actually, what data sets are you actually training your models on? Exactly. And how do you make sure that it's the right data that it's learning from? Because it learns from what you show it.
Exactly.
So, and then when I gave a talk on this, I mean, like our kids, you know, they don't know they don't do what we tell them. They do what we do.
Yes.
And so the learning part is super important.
Yeah, and I think this analogy of kind of treating the AI as your children is really good. You have to be really responsible and lead by example towards your AI. So
fantastic. And it's actually, let's see, we'll skip that one.
Yeah.
That was a stupid thing to say, Sebastian. But thank you, Sebastian. Let's see. That's a long and difficult question. You spoke about predictive maintenance. Any suggestions of availability of data on mesh and data products, especially on tools? A specific question, but I don't know if you have any comments on that one.
I don't want to move into to suggesting on tools, because this is very much
we'll skip that one.
On tech questions.
Don't worry about that. Anyway, thank you. Okay, thank you, Avanti. Thank you for listening in. Avanti is one of my regulars here. Thank you for cool. And again, keep the questions going for a while longer in the feed. Are there any questions from the room? Any live questions here to Johanna while we have her over online and you have her in here? Otherwise, you can probably stay in the room with her. I know after 3 o'clock there's something else happening. But with that, I will say it's 3 p.m. You've just watched Innovation Fika with me, Donnie, and a fantastic guest, just as normal, on a Wednesday afternoon for your 30-minute coffee break with super interesting people and super interesting subjects. I'll see you next week, 2:30 p.m. Innovation Fika again. But with that, I will say thank you so much to Johanna. Thank you for coming. Thank you, my audience, for staying awake.
Thank you.